When you think of royalty, you probably picture lives of total luxury, right? And, dying peacefully in some grand palace. But for some rulers, their final moments were, well, they were anything but peaceful. Today, we're going to crack open the history books and look at the most shocking, gruesome, and honestly, sometimes just plain bizarre ends met by some of history's most powerful people.
Okay, let's just dive right into the deep end with one of the most brutal stories you'll ever hear. The end of the Byzantine Emperor Andronicus I Komnenos. His death wasn't some swift execution. No. It was a horrifying 3-day-long public spectacle of pure vengeance.
So how in the world did he end up here? Well, believe it or not, Andronikos actually started out as a hero. He was a champion of the people, cracking down on corruption and going after the rich elites who were exploiting everybody. But that didn't last. His rule pretty quickly descended into a regime of fear, paranoia, and just endless executions. So when a military disaster hit the empire, the very same public that once cheered for him, they turned on him with an absolute, terrifying fury.
And the cruelty, it was systematic. This wasn't just a quick mob killing. Over 3 agonizing days, his right hand was chopped off, his teeth and hair were literally ripped out, one of his eyes was gouged out, and they poured boiling water on his face. The grand finale came at the Hippodrome, where he was hung upside down and stabbed by soldiers, basically for sport. And get this, accounts say his remains were just left there, unburied, for years.
But it wasn't always an angry mob you had to be afraid of. For a lot of rulers, the deadliest threat came from much, much closer to home. It came from their own inner circle, through betrayal and cold-blooded political schemes. And there is no better example than Mary, Queen of Scots. Her story is just tragic. After being forced off her own throne in Scotland, she fled to England, hoping her cousin, Queen Elizabeth I, would protect her. Well, that didn't happen. Instead, she was locked up for almost 2 decades. Her fate was sealed when she got caught up in a plot to assassinate Elizabeth, which led to a death sentence for treason. But the execution itself, my gosh, it was a complete horror show. The executioner was clumsy, to put it mildly. The first swing of the axe missed her neck completely and slammed into the back of her head. The second blow didn't even finish the job, so he had to hack at her a 3rd time. And then, in this final, shocking moment, when he lifted her head to show the crowd, her wig fell off, revealing that the once vibrant queen actually had short gray hair. Just unbelievable. You see this pattern of betrayal again and again throughout history. Take the Roman Emperor Commodus and England's Edward II. They ruled centuries apart, but they both made the same fatal mistake. They alienated the people closest to them. In the super high-stakes, claustrophobic world of a royal court, being close to power is both a prize and a huge danger. Commodus was a complete megalomaniac who started plotting against his own people, while Edward II just angered all the nobles by playing favorites. The result? Exactly the same. They were both murdered by the very people they should have been able to trust the most. And the death of Edward II is wrapped in a particularly gruesome rumor. See, to avoid the political mess of a public assassination, his killers allegedly murdered him in a way that wouldn't leave any marks on the outside. The legend says a red-hot poker was used, ensuring his death looked natural to the world, while sending a terrifying message to anyone who knew the real story.
But some rulers didn't just die. Their deaths, and even their actual bodies, were turned into the ultimate symbols of humiliation. They became trophies for their conquerors.
Let's look at 2 of the most extreme examples. The Roman Emperor Valerian was the first emperor ever to be captured in battle. His Persian captors reportedly used him as a literal human footstool. After he died, he was skinned and stuffed like a taxidermy trophy. Then, centuries later, the Caliph al-Mustasim of Baghdad was captured by the Mongols. To avoid spilling royal blood on the ground, which was taboo for them, he was wrapped up in a rug and trampled to death by horses.
But before his death, al-Mustim had to endure one final, soul-crushing torture. For 1 solid week, the Mongols forced him to watch as they completely destroyed his glorious capital of Baghdad. He witnessed the destruction of incredible palaces and libraries, and historians wrote that the Tigris River literally ran red with the blood of his people.
All right, so not every terrible royal death was some grand political statement. Some of them were just bizarre, like freak accidents and agonizing medical treatments that honestly sound more like torture than healing.
Okay, get this.
Charles II of Navarre, also known as Charles the Bad, great nickname by the way, he was suffering from some condition that left him unable to move, and his doctor prescribed a very strange treatment. He was to be wrapped from head to toe in linen sheets soaked in brandy. So one night, an attendant is sewing the sheet shut and needs to cut the thread. Instead of grabbing scissors, she brings a candle close to burn it off. The brandy-soaked wrappings instantly went up in a fireball, and the king was burned alive, totally unable to move.
Then you've got Charles II of England. When he collapsed from what was probably kidney failure, the best doctors in the entire kingdom rushed to his side. Their cures, however, were an absolute nightmare. They drained huge amounts of his blood, they forced him to purge violently, they burned his skin with chemicals to create blisters, and they even fed him mercury, which, is a poison. His final 4 days were pure agony, all inflicted by his own physicians.
And for maybe the most humiliating end of all time, we might have to look to England's Edmund Ironside. Now the story, and it might just be a legend, goes that he was assassinated while on the toilet. An attacker supposedly hid in the cesspit below him and stabbed him from beneath. This happened just weeks after he signed a treaty to divide England with his rival. And with Edmund suddenly dead, his rival got to inherit the whole kingdom. Talk about convenient.
So, after walking through all of these horrifying final moments, from public torture to bizarre accidents and brutal betrayals, we're kind of left with this lingering question about what it all means for their legacy.
So here it is. Are these people forever defined by the sheer horror of how they died? When we hear the name Andronicos, do we think of his anti-corruption reforms, or do we immediately think of the 3 days of torture? Does Mary Queen of Scots' botched execution completely overshadow the complex politics of her life? It really makes you wonder if, for some rulers, the most enduring part of their story isn't how they lived at all, but the unforgettable, terrible way they died.